My name is Kaylee. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Community Partnerships Manager at Eating Recovery Center and Pathlight Mood and Anxiety Center. We just want you to know that Eating Recovery Center and Pathlight Mood and Anxiety Center offers a full spectrum of treatment services for adults, adolescents, and children of all genders. We also offer free resources such as free virtual support groups, events like the one you are at right now, podcasts, and more for the community. So please reach out if you are in need of any further support from us outside of this series. We do have a lot planned for this next hour as usual, so I'm just going to quickly go over the guidelines, and then Emma will be pasting them in the chat throughout the hour just to give us, to make sure we maintain a safe space here. This workshop is not therapy nor a replacement for therapy. Please be open and respectful. Remember, we all come from different backgrounds and life experiences. Honor confidentiality. We encourage you to share in the chat as you feel comfortable and when responding to prompts. Joni will be giving your questions likely once the session is over. She'll review them and hopefully cover them if they're applicable to the group at the following week, which is kind of what we've been doing so far. Grief can be a very heavy topic, so we encourage you to take care of yourself as needed. Get up, stretch, snack, water. If you need to leave, that is totally okay. These are heavy topics that we're going through. Just during our group, make plans for self-care, and then afterward, make plans for self-care. Please take care of yourselves above everything else. I am super excited to introduce Joni once again to week 3 of our Grief Release series. As a reminder, we will be recording this series and it'll be available for later viewing. And with that, I will hand it over to you, Joni.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Hope you had a good week. There are a couple of things I wanted to talk about on the chat. One of them was that I mentioned oversharing last week, and there were several people that said they overshare. And I wanted to explain something. When we first have loss, we're compelled to overshare, right? We're compelled to tell our story. When my husband died and somebody said, "How are you?" I told my whole story. I could not stop. It's just the way it is with grief. As my heart healed a little bit, my story got a little shorter. So don't be upset with yourself for oversharing. That is a very normal reaction to grief, especially when we're in overload, right? And so one of the questions was, how can we figure out where emotions are coming from when we have no idea? What a good question. First of all, we kind of have to figure out what our emotions are, right? We talked about that a little bit last week. To understand what the heck is going on with me. I don't know about you, but there is such a jumble of emotions. You know, if you took all of your emotions and wrapped them all together, that's what it would feel like. Trying to take those apart is often difficult to do. But if I look at a chart, let me see if I put that here. There it is. I put a couple of things. This is how I figure out what's going on with me when I feel confused about my emotions. And I'm trying to figure out where they're coming from. I ask myself, am I mad, sad, glad, scared, or guilty? Right? Those 5 seem to encompass most of what I feel. You know, you can find a chart online, or you can look at this one, which is really blurry as I look at it. But it gives you a little more definition. If mad, sad, glad, scared, guilty isn't enough, then you can take a picture of this chart or find one online that help you get into more details of what's going on. But see the categories above? So those categories seem to be the way I get into it. And when we don't know where it's coming from, that's an interesting question. The way I'm interpreting that is you're not sure what loss it is, or why do I feel sad? That kind of a question. Why am I mad? What's going on? And honestly, there are times when I'm trying to figure it out. I do this, am I mad, sad, glad, scared, guilty? And then I eliminate the ones that I can, if I can't get clear, I eliminate, well, I'm not glad, right? So I can go through, I'm not glad and I'm not guilty, but I do feel sad and I do feel scared. So that's really helpful. And then I write down, what am I afraid of? Literally on a piece of paper, put my pen to it and just start writing. And invariably I will find it. Often this looks like me being mad at the driver in front of me and not understand, because I'm cussing out the driver for the way he's driving. It's not so unusual for me to cuss, but it is when I blame it on somebody. So that's when I go home and write down, what am I mad about? And then I find that I'm mad because I'm having to do a chore that was my husband's to do and he's not here. And they don't have to make a whole lot of sense. That's the thing about feelings, right? They're not logical. It's okay. But once I find it, oftentimes it can evaporate. It says, yep, that sucks. And then I can go on about my business, right? And it's over. So I just kind of break it apart, keep it as simple as I can so I can figure out what's going on. Another question that came up was overload. So many of you have so many losses at once, right? And it doesn't mean that it doesn't have to be a lot like all together. When you looked at that major loss chart, right? What are the losses have I had in my life? Sometimes that can be really overwhelming when you look at it. And the thing about multiple losses is that they can pile up. The reason we want to look at losses that are unnamed or unmourned is because the first step in reconciling those losses in us is to acknowledge them. That's what that's about. And so, but what happens when you have someone said they had 30 losses within 2 or 3 years, right? Those multiple loss situations it's like slows us down. It can stop us in our tracks. And so it's like, how do I do that? My husband died and the following year my mom died. And that was just overwhelming, multiple losses. And I had to just take time to grieve. And I didn't worry about which one I was grieving, because when you lose a person in your life, you lose so many other things, don't you? There are secondary losses that come into play. They say when you lose a spouse, you have 100 extra roles that you have to fill, for instance. And so all I did was just slow down and take one little thing at a time. If I was thinking about my mom that day, that's the person I mourned. I didn't worry about which one do I do. I just did whichever one came up for me. And if you have multiple losses, that's when you really need a counselor to help you walk through that. It's super helpful. That's what I did with my losses, right? In a family, what happens is, because loss is unique to everybody in that family, anybody connected to the loss will walk through loss in their own way. And so we kind of have to make space for each other, because when we're in loss, we can be so overwhelmed. We need to be understood, right? We need to be cared for and understood. So we don't have a lot of capacity to care for somebody else. So we have to be able to do both and pay attention to how we're feeling and what's going on with us. A lot of times, we will put our grief off while we're taking care of other people. And it's really important to strike a balance in there. That's why talking to a therapist, talking to a grief counselor helps, because it brings us back to concentrating on our stuff and what we need to do to walk through, because it's pretty easy to get into helping somebody else and get out of ours. The only problem is it just delays our grief like crazy. Yeah. And then it can become complicated grief right as we step it. How to manage your family or yourself minimizing feelings. A lot of people grow up in families where we minimize our feelings. You're not supposed to, nope, we don't talk about that, right? It's a closed family system. And so we don't talk about that. I've had people come to me and say, I lost my mom. My dad said, we're never going to mention her name again. He married 5 months later. I was to call her mother, and I never got to talk about it, which creates a lot of delayed grief, right? Unembarked grief. And you can't be responsible for other people unless you've got kids, right? If you've got kids, you are responsible for them. But if they are adults, you're responsible to people, not for them. So if you have adult children or brothers, sisters, the best way to work through this kind of issue is to don't minimize your own feelings. Do your work. Say things out loud, right? You can go at this very gently because remember, you're sensitive and fragile right now. So say how you feel to the safest person in your family and go at it gently. The other thing you can do is take a chart, go online, get a chart of feelings and tack one of those suckers up on the refrigerator. Put one in your bathroom, stick it on the mirror so you can see it, so you can work on your stuff. But in the meantime, it may encourage others. And the other thing is that if you have children at home, children grieve according to their environment as well as their age. That's really important. And so if they see you grieving, if they see you mourning, if an outward expression of some kind, like I am just so sad today, right? It allows them to feel their feelings, that they understand that that is a normal reaction to loss. So I hope that answers those questions. And as Kaylee said, be sure and just put them in the chat if you have something else you want to ask, and we'll address those. We'll do what we can, right? Okay. Now, I want to thank Kaylee for interrupting me last week. She was watching the clock and I was not. So that was great because she's so right. This ritual, this tool this is one of my all-time favorites. I use it constantly in my life, really. And so I'm excited to get into that. And that's where we're going right now, right? So let's get to here. All ritual deals with transition. Okay, I need to move this out of my way a little bit. And transitions deal with change. And rituals mark that change, that change is occurring. So an idea of this would be a wedding, right? It marks a change. Graduation, baptisms, all of these different rituals that we do. And for this discussion, we can do rituals of remembrance, and it's sort of like ceremonies in a way, right? But in this case, what we wanted to discuss is we want to use a ritual to release or let go of something. And one of the reasons we're talking about this was that there was so much comment about toxic relationships. How do I grieve someone who was toxic in my life who passed away? Was one of the questions. How do I grieve a toxic relationship that I'm out of and that person is still around? And so that's what this is going to address. Okay. So we want to be able to release and let go of something, and we have to decide what that something is. So when we release something, it's very important that we replace it. We welcome something in. And I will explain this to you. First of all, the question is, what do we want to let go of? That's the thing to think about. What is it that I want to let go of? Now, one of the resources is Joanne Petrie that you'll see on the website. Joanne wrote a book on how to say goodbye. And she uses ritual a lot in her work. So one of the things she does, and the way she used it, was she lost her husband suddenly. He was 46 years old. And she went about, as she worked through her grief, she got to a point that she was ready to let go of pieces of the relationship as it once was. So what she did was she wrote down everything she lost when she lost her husband, Dwayne. She lost her best friend, her partner raising their daughter, her tennis partner. He used to invite her to golf. She did not have a hard time letting go of golf in that relationship. And so what she did was she took the easiest thing she could think of first, and then she moved into the more difficult ones. Now, she didn't start this until 2 years after the loss, right? So what she did was she gathered up all of his golf things and sold them and said, Dwayne, I'm letting go of you in golf. Because when they went, she didn't really play, and he only invited her when he couldn't get somebody to go. And she would ride in the cart, and she talked a lot. And so he spent the whole time saying, shh, Joanne, I'm putting, stop. Right. So she didn't have a hard time with that. But tennis, they had a great time playing tennis together. So she kept his tennis racket. She walked around the tennis court and did her ritual of walking around and saying goodbye to him, thanking him for all the fun they had, all of that with that tennis racket. She did not get rid of that tennis racket because that was a really strong linking object to him for her. So she kept that tennis racket, right? So and she worked up to the other things as she came to them, as they came up. But when you want to let go of something that's getting in your way, that's the way I look at this. And this is how I use it in my life. Denial, letting go of denial is really, whether that's denial of your family background, denial of the loss, denial, dreams and hopes, letting go of dreams and hopes, right? Those shattered dreams and what it was supposed to be, false beliefs. I thought this was forever. I thought that person was going to love me forever. They said they would, right? When it's a breakup of relationship, being poorly treated by someone, right? Now we're getting into those toxic relationships again. A behavior in yourself that leaves you with regrets. Most of us have shoulda, woulda, couldas going on when somebody is lost, right? And so we can use this tool. Maybe we were the ones who were toxic. There were a few people on the chat who mentioned that. And now they're in a position of healing in their life, and they're covered with regret. What do I do? What do I do? This can be a really good way of doing that, right? After you go through your work of making amends, whatever that looks like. And we'll be talking about that. I think it's next week. We're going to be talking about making amends and guilt. And so it's coming, but this is a great tool. Feeling undervalued and small, right? When you've been in a bad relationship, this is often what's left. And it's hard to get that thinking out of the way, isn't it? Disappointments, unrealized goals. Yeah. Sometimes shocking discoveries. We had someone who found out they were adopted, or they were unwanted or inconvenient, right? Orphaned, the shock of death and other tragedies, divorce, parental neglect, incest, all kinds of shocking tragedies, right? Dysfunction or abusive families. So the question is, what keeps coming up for you and seems to have you stuck? That is the best way to kind of figure out, what is it I would like to let go of? So the first time I took this, I had this in class when I first started working on my grief. And I thought, I'm not letting go of anything. And then it was explained that this is not about letting go of a person, right? We do not let go of our people. That's not it. This is about working through the pain of the loss That's what we're talking about. So I thought, what keeps coming up for me? What do I feel stuck in? And I realized that I kept trying to do everything the way Chad did it, my husband. I was trying to make a decision. I think, how would he do it? How would he do it? Well, honestly, we were so different. He could be sitting in the chair telling me, and I couldn't understand how he did it. So what I did is I thought, okay, I'm going to do a ritual. And I just did it really simply. I took a candle and I lit it, a real one, and lit it. And I said out loud, right here, right? I said out loud, I'm letting go of the way Chad did things. And when you say goodbye, you always say hello to something else. You welcome something in. And I said, I'm welcoming in the way I do things. And then I thought, how do I do things? Oh no, I asked Chad. I get his feedback because he was smart. He would, he knew. And if he didn't know, he just made it up and went along with it anyway. But I thought, okay, so I asked Chad. Why did I ask Chad? Because he was smart. He had an answer. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can find smart people. I can find a CPA. I can find an attorney. I can find people who know the answer to my questions. And honestly, it's like a little piece of my heart healed. And I was able to get unstuck and make decisions that needed to be made. It's probably why I have such a love affair with this particular tool, because it made such a difference in my life. Because we need an ending before we have a beginning, right? So first, what you do is you consider, how do I want to do this ritual? And where do I want to do it? Those are really good questions. Let me give you another example of some ideas and some rituals that people have done in the grief classes that I've taught over the years. This one always blows me away. 22-year-old woman came to class. When we went around and talked about what grief brought you here, she said, I have a mom who is alcoholic, has mental illness. From the time I can remember, she called me every name in the book and told me she was going to kill herself. It's going to be my fault. And I have come to class because what I've lost is myself. And I don't know who I am. And when we came to ritual, she came the next week with an empty bottle of the wine that her mom drank, filled with pieces of paper where she had written down the words her mother said to her. Those painful words, stuffed. I mean, this bottle was stuffed full of slips of paper. And she said, this is who my crazy mom said I am. And tonight I'm going to go bury this bottle because that's not who I am. And I'm going to go find out who I am. And that's how I'm going to live from now on. Right? I mean, powerful. What a powerful tool this is, right? There's lots of ways to use this. We had someone else who, she and her husband went to Seattle for treatment for his cancer. And every time they went over there, they had a cactus garden. So they bought a new cactus. And this chemo was supposed to cure him, and it didn't. And so she wound up with so many pill bottles, right? Empty pill bottles of his, that she took a little piece of cactus and she broke it off and she planted it, put dirt in those little bottles and planted it, and brought everybody in class a little cactus and said, I'm planting this to let go of my expectation and my dream that this was going to help my husband. But I want this life to continue. And that was hers, right? So that's what I mean. There's lots of different ways to let go of things, but always welcome something else in. Sometimes they're really subtle. It would have been 10 years after Chad died. It was our wedding anniversary. And I had gone through 9 anniversaries, right? But that one got me. And of course, always I start out going, what the heck is going on? Why now? And then I stop the question and go, okay, what do I do? So I thought, I have I wrote and I couldn't get rid of it. And I knew, oh, I'm probably going to need to do, this is going to call for a ritual. So I grabbed a couple of roses, and because I always buy roses on an anniversary, grabbed a couple of roses and I got in my car and I thought I can go for a walk downtown. I can walk on the boardwalk by the lake because there'd be a ton of people. It's July. So I parked my car. I mean, I'm bummed all the way down there. So, and so sad. And I just let the wave wash over me. And I walk up on the boardwalk, and guess who's coming toward me? A bride and a groom. Is the only time I've ever seen that happen. And I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? And I thought, okay, what do I know? What do I know? I know to let the wave wash over me. So I'm just going to think about my wedding day and how much we loved each other. And I just rehearsed that wedding day all the way down that pier till I got to the end. And this is the subtlety I'm talking about. It's more of a nuance, I think. I got to the end of the pier and I thought, okay, what am I going to let go of? I can't let go of being alone. That's what was wrong. I can't let go of being alone because I am alone. But how am I thinking of being lonely? And here's the subtlety. I thought, you know what? It's the way I'm thinking about being lonely. I think it shouldn't be this way. And this is where I see people get stuck all the time. It should not be this way. I'm not going any further, right? They get stuck in that. And I thought, what do I know? Maybe this is what I'm supposed to be right now. Maybe there's something I'm to learn. Maybe there's something I'm to see. Maybe I'm not to get caught up in the fact that I'm lonely. So that's what I threw the rose in the water. And I said, I'm letting go of my definition of lonely and letting it be whatever it needs to be. Right? And I thought, what am I letting in? Well, I'm going to go in search of a new definition of loneliness and not get hung up in it. And when I turned around, it's like that pain just lifted. And I walked back, I got in my car, and I cranked up my tunes and sang all the way home, right? I mean, I use this. I use this tool. It's a good one. Okay? Now, this piece right here, sometimes we get stuck in a treasured wound. Yeah? This is something traumatic that hurts us deeply, and we become defined by it, right? That's the getting stuck piece. We define ourselves by the trauma. Mine was the death of my dad. And I literally remember in the healing process that I came to a place of releasing pain in that experience. And I stopped and I thought, who am I going to be if I'm not defined by my dad's tragic death, that sudden death when I was 14 years old? But I had to make a conscious decision to no longer let it define me. It shaped me. It taught me. It affected me deeply, but it no longer had to define me. And I realized that I could discover who I was in a different way and live my life freer by doing that. So that's always an important thing is, am I being defined by this trauma in my life, by a tragedy? And to make a decision someplace along the healing process, if it's possible, right? Because you can do whatever you want to. But for me, I found that this allowed me to have a better life. And that's what I'm always wanting. I want a better life. I want a big life. I want as much life as I can get. Still, at my age, doesn't make any difference. I heard someone, it was some show, some TV show, somebody said, you know, I think I want to be a lawyer. And she said, you'll be 92 by the time you get your law degree. She said, yeah, but I'm going to be 92 anyway. And I thought, oh, that's really good right there. That's really good. So that's why I love using these tools when stuff comes up for me. Yeah. Okay. So this is this is one of the ways, this is a framework I use to figure out what's going on with me and to figure out how I can understand myself better. And usually what I do is, so here's the idea. Our experience takes us to our beliefs or our thoughts, right? Now, there are people who put these beliefs that teach us beliefs, right? But a lot of the things that we think we picked up as kids. And here's the thing about kids. Kids are great observers, aren't they? They're amazing. Horrible interpreters. Just terrible. They always will interpret that as something about them, right? And so we often have these thoughts that have been in our little brains before they ever got grown up. And those thoughts create our emotions, and those emotions drive our behavior. So here's an example. And it took me a long time to find this, by the way. And there's lots of different reasons this happens, but this is a real common one. I'm not enough, right? That's a thought. I'm not enough. So here's what happened. My dad had PTSD like crazy, and there was no help. And so he was really sad. He was depressed, basically. Well, I was a really happy little kid, and I thought, I'm going to make him happy, but it's going to be a secret. And so that's what I started trying to do. And I mean, I did everything. I put a plastic worm in his coffee and he spit it across the table. It was hilarious, I thought. Actually, he did too. But one day I remember looking across and he was sitting in a chair and he was doing this. And I thought, oh no, I can't make him happy. I'm not enough. Guess what's stuck in my little brain? I'm not enough, right? And so the emotions that come out of that thinking are fear of abandonment, sadness, frustration, right? All of those things. What was my behavior? Try harder, figure it out, find the answers, right? I became a wonderful people pleaser. Man, I was the queen of codependency right here, taking care of other people and just trying harder and trying harder. Now, a lot of times, the opposite happens when we think we're not enough. The way we handle that is it makes us mad, and we think, why should we try at all? So it seems it's an extreme. It's one or the other. It's either or thinking. So a lot of times, when I said talking about trying to figure out what I was mad about, I use this right here. I look at my behavior first and I go, what is going on with me? What emotions are driving my behavior? Well, I'm sad. Well, I'm obviously angry. Okay. What am I thinking that's creating that emotion? So when I say I write down, why am I angry? It takes me right up here to my thought. And this can be faulty thinking. And I can just be running on autopilot. So once I find that, usually I don't have to go here. I just have to go here and find out what I'm thinking that's driving my emotion, that's driving my behavior. I will use this in journaling. I'll make a T and I'll write on one side thought and the other side feeling. And I always get my feelings before I get my thinking. So I will write out my emotions first. What am I feeling? Well, I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm blah, blah, blah. And then I go over and say, what am I thinking that's creating this emotion? And is it a true thought? Is it a true thought? Is it true that I'm not enough? Yeah. So here's what I did. So I wrote that down and I looked at that and I thought, I'm not enough. Well, it feels like it's a true thought. And then I realized, okay, what's it about? Well, that thought is about approval. I am looking for approval if I'm not enough. And I thought, who in the world do I need approval from at my age? Now, I was younger than I am now, but even it didn't matter. I was a grown woman. Whose approval did I actually need? And I really didn't need anybody's approval to have a good life. Nobody had to tell me that I was okay so I could have a good life. Now, believe me, I love approval. Who doesn't? So that's natural for us. But what approval did I need? And for me, I wanted the universe's approval, right? For me, that's important. That's an important piece in my life. And my higher power, I choose to call God, I wanted that. And then I started thinking, do I have that? Yep, I've got that. And then I looked at why, and I realized, oh yeah, okay, yes. See, I think God thinks I'm a bum, the bomb diggity. So that that's where I went, and I went, oh my gosh. So I got out my little candles again, and I lit one, and I said, I'm letting go of my little girl thought that I wasn't enough. And I blew it out. I lit it again, and I said, I'm welcoming in my grown woman view that I know I'm more than enough. And I blew it out, and I got up and washed the dishes. Right? I mean, it's just that because I practiced this a lot, that took me 15 minutes once I discovered what it was. And it made a huge difference because sometimes ritual to me is so important because if I had stopped without doing a ritual, I would still have that tendency to lean toward that little girl view that I wasn't enough. But because I said, nope, that one's gone, I'm replacing it with this, I reframed it and it made all the difference. Makes a huge difference. Okay. All right. So let's talk about anger for a minute. Let's see how I'm going to look at the clock. Okay. um, anger, recognize this, right? We talked about feelings. We started talking about feelings. And then I wanted to give you that ritual because of the conversation around toxic, right? Relationships. So now we're going to talk about anger. Recognize all this, tense muscles, that jaw, everything gets tight, pressure in the chest, feeling like a pressure cooker. Your heart is racing. And sometimes we have a sense of power because there's energy in anger, isn't there? A lot of people will go to anger instead of sadness because they feel like it's energized. At least they've got some energy. I said to someone one time who I knew very, very well, who never was angry, and then all of a sudden she was angry constantly. And she, because and I remember feeling this, it was such a high to finally be able to speak your anger, to say it out loud, to experience it a little bit, right? Now we want to be able to figure out a way to have our feelings and not hurt ourselves or somebody else, right? That's the key. But there was a sense of power in it. And I said, honey, you're angry all the time though. And she said, well, yeah, but if I'm not angry, I'm going to be sad. Right? So a lot of times we will cover up our sad feelings with anger. And it works for a while, but it pushes people away from us and it makes us isolated. It's not a good way to handle anger. So let's talk about what we can do with it. What can we do? Right? So it's not having the feeling. Those are automatic. Feelings are automatic. You just suddenly will be angry, right? It's what we choose to do with it. It's the decision that we make because they're automatic. We don't choose to feel angry, but we get to choose how we're going to respond to it or react to it. Yeah. It's a good thing, anger. We need it. But it's not right or wrong, but what we do with it can be. So what can we do with it that doesn't hurt ourselves or somebody else? Well, we can name it. We got to label it. I'm angry, and breathe, right? Breathe. It's really important. Big difference when I said to my husband, I'm angry, he'd say, what are you angry about? And we could have a conversation versus me going around slamming doors and him saying, what's going on? And I say, nothing, right? So much better to be able to say it out loud and talk through it. Now, if I've gotten a conversation with my husband and I started getting angry in the conversation, what I would do is say, hold on, I've got to go to the bathroom. And he would say, now? I go, yes. And I go in the bathroom, lean against the sink and breathe, right? Take a break. say, I'm getting mad. Let's take a break. Because when you are talking to somebody and you get mad, nothing good's going to come out of that, right? Unless it's a dangerous situation and you need to get out. That's a different deal. But under normal circumstances where you just get mad about something that you're not going to work through, when both people get mad, all it does is turn into a contest. It's a competition to see who's right at that point, and nothing gets settled. Another thing is a venting partner. This is an interesting idea. A venting partner needs to be somebody you trust who has a phone and they can tell time. And so what you do is you agree, you can be each other's venting partners, that you can call them when you need to unload, when you need to blow off some steam. And so what happens when my venting partner calls me and says, I need to vent, I say, okay, go, you got 5 minutes. And I literally lay the phone down. And she can just say whatever she wants to. And I come back in 5 minutes and I go, okay, are you done? And she goes, no. And I go, okay, you got 5 more minutes. I put the phone down, I go do something, I come back. Okay, it's been 10 minutes, you're done. And she goes, oh, thank you so much. And that's it. I don't ask her how it went. I don't have to listen. I can listen if I want to, but I just lay the phone down. She just needs a place where she can say whatever she wants to say. And so that's really helpful. Breaking stuff safely. I have a friend who buys old dishes and goes to a big garbage place and breaks the dishes, right? And there are actually shops now that you can go in and throw dishes. You could throw stuff safely. One of my favorites is ice cubes. I have a friend who has a 15-year-old daughter, and when she gets snarky and she comes home and she's mad at her mom and it's all about what's going on at school, her mom goes, get the ice cubes, and they have a bag ready in the freezer. They go out on the front porch and they throw ice cubes on the grass. And she says, tell me about it. And her daughter is naming her feelings while she's throwing ice cubes, right? They don't have to clean it up. All of that gets spent, right? She's taken her grief and turned it into mourning, right? She's expressing it and it gets out of her, and then she can relax and they can have a good evening. Speed writing, you can write just big, ugly, whatever. Physical activity a lot of the time. This is me. When I get mad, I tend to clean. I'm really good at it when I'm mad. So, and a lot of people go for a walk, get outside, do something physical with their anger and spin that heat. You can find a support group. If anger is something that is really causing you problems, remember that deal. How do I know if it causes a problem? If it creates a problem, it's a problem. That's how you know it's a problem, right? Find a support group, find a good counselor. If you feel that sense of power, understand it's an illusion, right? We often use it for control, but it leaves us very lonely. Yeah, it's an illusion. This is not a good way to handle anger. And if you have some other really good ideas of how you handle anger, please put them in the chat. Share those. So let's talk a little bit about effective communication, right? It is obviously essential for all human relationships. The communication pathway, what was said versus what was heard. I'm going to show you a slide on that in just a second. Active listening. This really is something that I was talking to my son who's married, and he said, I thought I was listening. He'd taken a class and he said, I thought I was listening. I wasn't listening, I was fixing, right? So active listening is when you are actually listening to what the person is saying. Sometimes you'll clarify it by repeating what they're saying. Instead of trying to think of what you're going to say when they get through talking. That's often what we do. With good communication, you want to focus on one issue at a time. Sometimes this is hard to do because once somebody starts talking, a lot of times we will have all this stuff that we want to talk about and we got it in this gunny sack and we drop it on the table and we just start pulling all this stuff out. Well, back in 2015, I mean, we just pull this stuff out that we haven't talked about. But when you're trying to communicate, save that for another time that you can focus on that one issue. Stay on task, one issue at a time. The other thing that happens a lot of times is people will take you on a rabbit trail. You'll be talking to them and you'll say, I just want to tell you, right? You're expressing your feelings, your pain, whatever it is, with iMessages, and you're saying, I feel like this when you do that. And they say, well, you, right? And it's like, okay, we can talk about me in a minute, but let's stay on this for a minute. Let's get this settled, right? That's another good way to handle that kind of communication. Remember, no one can read your mind. We're really bad at this. We really, especially our significant other. We think they should be able to. We've been with them long enough, they should know. But I'm telling you, one of the biggest things to learn is how to ask for what you want and need from someone. But we get hurt that they don't remember, that they can't read our mind, that they haven't paid attention. And it is hurtful. And then what I found was I get over that hurt as fast as I can. When I finally started asking for what I wanted and needed, but I had to really think, what do I actually need? Because I'll do this nebulous kind of, I want you to show me how much you love me kind of stuff, right? Well, honestly, my husband really needed direction. He needed to know exactly what I was talking about. So I said to him, I need you to wake me up with a kiss and a cup of coffee and not before 6 o'clock. And he was like, oh, okay, I can do that. Right? If I could explain it to him that way, instead of me trying to give him little subtle messages here, he did not pick up on subtle. And it hurt my feelings that he didn't. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's a really important piece. Ask for what you want and need, and figure that out before you talk. It's really, it's so much better. He said to me one time, what are you trying to tell me? And I said to him, you're being an ass and I need you to stop. And he said, really? And I said, yeah. And he said, why didn't you just tell me that? And I said, because I was raised to be kind and gentle and sweet. And he said, I can't hear you when you use that many words. And I said, okay, so here's what I'm hearing you say. You want me to just tell you, just say it. And he said, please. And I have checked with a lot of people over the years and with couples, and every single time I'll say, is that what you want? Yes, please. Please tell me what you want and need, because I want to show you that I love you, but I don't know how. And so don't exaggerate or overgeneralize. You always take that out of your vocabulary, and don't communicate to hurt, right? This is not always easy to do because we're hurt. We want to hurt somebody back. Try not to do this, and watch out for trying to fix instead of listening and communicating. That's really good. My husband got to the point that he'd say, wait, don't talk yet. Tell me what you want me to do with this. And I'd say, oh, don't fix it. Just listen. I just need you to listen. He'd go, okay, cool. All right. So here's that communication pathway. Here's two people and they got their own baggage, don't they? Right? So here's what it looks like when they say something to each other. Comes out of his mouth, right? Goes through her baggage into her ear. And the same thing here. She says something, goes through his baggage into his ear. This is what this looks like. A friend of mine said to her husband, would you please hang up your wet towel when you get through with your shower? And he started getting mad. And she said, why are you getting mad? And he said, you just call me a pig. And she said, I didn't call you a pig. I just asked you to hang up your towel. And he said, oh, that's what my mom used to tell me. See what I mean? What is said and what is heard are often two different things. So here are there's a clarifying question and a comment. So had she said to him, "What did you just hear me say?" Right? And you can kind of tell by the look on somebody's face when you say something. What'd you just hear me say? This is not when you're talking to your child about taking out the garbage going, "Did you just hear me say? What'd you just hear me say?" It's not like that. This is a real question. What did you just hear me say? And the other is, this is what I heard you say. And you can repeat how that sounded to you, right? Those are really, really helpful. It's also when we are talking and we're trying to have some communication resolution, right? Or another way of saying it is conflict management. Timing is everything. I always wanted to talk about 10 o'clock at night. That was not working for my husband, right? I had to respect his process as well as mine. And when I was ready to talk about something, I had thought about it. I thought it all the way through. I was ready to settle it. For him, he was just first hearing it, and he needed 24 hours to think about it. He was really linear, and I'm intuitive. And so he needed some time. So I had to respect his way of processing. And honestly, he listened to me better than I listened to him. So I had to learn how to really stop and listen. 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? Listen more than you speak. Have some grace and compassion for both of you. And compromise. Again, what do I actually need in this situation is really a great thing to work through. Know that it's not a competition and that you're going to have some forgiveness in here more than likely when it's conflict. But some clarity, some timing, listen, and realize that you're probably going to be compromising. Okay? So let me give you some encouragement. Please be kind to yourself and others, right? Have some patience. It takes a lot of patience for others and for ourselves. Pace yourself. Do this in little small doses. Do this work. Take a break. Do something that brings you joy, right? And hang in there. It can get better, right? It truly can. So here's your homework. Ready? Think of a ritual. You can think about it, you can do it, whatever you want to do, but think of something you'd like to let go of and a ritual you might do to facilitate that. Okay? And I found these questions really interesting. So write about these 5 questions. How has anger hurt you in the past? How has it hurt others? Right? Now, sometimes we're the other. That we just don't do anger. But the funny thing is we stuff it, right? How anger hurt me in the past was that I kept turning it into guilt. And it had a big old effect on my life. And that was my anger that I kept turning into guilt because I didn't know a healthy way to release it. How's it hurt others? Why do I use anger? Is it a learned behavior? If that's an issue for you, why do you use it? Did you grow up with somebody who did that? Who used anger to control the situation? And what can I do in the future to keep my anger from being hurtful or destructive to me or anybody else? Yeah. So I'm going to leave those up so you can see them. So you can take a picture or you can copy them. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for being here again. I hope you have a good week. Blessings to all of you.
Thank you so much, Joni. I just want to give everybody an extra moment to take a picture of this homework so you all have it for this week. And then we'll have, I believe, another slide. Joni, can you stop sharing your screen?
Sure. Just tell me how.
I think at the top, maybe for you, there's a stop share button. It might be at the
Oh,
bottom for you though, depending on what format you're using. There you go.
there.
Emma's got it.
I did
We
it.
want to, perfect. I love it. Teamwork. We want to make sure that everybody who is here has a chance to receive support, one-on-one, whatever support is needed. We just want to make sure that you know that we're a resource here for you ongoing. And so we want to make sure that you have this information available. So we'll just be posting this at the end of every group, just to make sure that you all know it is available to you. And I can't believe that we have 3 minutes. That feels wild. And I think everyone was so captivated by this conversation, just absorbing what you were saying. I don't see questions. I don't see questions. Wow. But Joni, we'll definitely be sending you the chat. I think some really powerful things were shared, some really great rituals that people are already participating in, that they were sharing with the group.
Nice.
So it's just been really beautiful
Oh,
to just see everybody supporting each other in the chat.
very cool.
Oh. Okay, well, I'm gonna give everyone a couple minutes back for the day.